So Dan, what about all those historians who don't agree with you?
They give the likelihood of the historical existence of Jesus a much higher probability than I do. But to argue from authority is to suggest that it's only the paid professionals who are qualified enough to read the scholarship to make an informed decision. And if that's true, the pews of most churches across this country should be emptied of people who are simply taken by at face value. But yeah, I agree that the mythicist, the pure mythicist position, and by the way, there are others. There are philosophers like Michael Martin who lean toward that direction, and there are, there's a small handful. But I agree that that they are a minority, but that the points they make, for the reasons that I gave, for example, even if that passage is allowed in Josephus, it's still secondhand. Josephus never claimed to have met Jesus. He was not a first-hand witness. And if somebody like Philo, who did exist and who did live and who did report about that period of history, Philo, who was there, who interviewed at least the second-generation people, wrote nothing about the historical Jesus. The reports we have come from much later. So yeah, let's give the historians and the scholars their due, but let's be skeptical. Let's question, and let's not simply appeal to authority to make our case.
Second question, how many of those dying and rising gods do you think you've actually got?
Well, as you say, was it a virgin or not? Either way, that was a...
No, dying and rising.
I know that, but as you say, some of those interpretations can be different. The fact that Jesus... How many are there? Well, let's see. Do I have a list here of them? There's the... you mentioned Osiris. And Romulus was reported, not by Livy, but I think by Plutarch, to have come back again to life. Of course, Plutarch wrote later. I don't have the entire list here, but there's a list of god-men who were put to death by political leaders of their day. And each of the stories differs. So I would guess... I'm not going to guess. I'm just going to say there were others before Jesus.
I'll come back to that in my turn. Sorry, where are we up to in timing?
2:30. So you got 2 more questions.
Dan, can you tell us what makes you think Philo, as he's normally known, of Alexandria, spent any time in Judea at all, let alone asking questions of people who might have known Jesus?
Well, he wrote about that area of the world. I read some scholars who called him Philo-Judaeus.
That's Philo title, yes.
Yeah, Philo of Judea.
Or Philo the Judean.
He's protected.
My apologies.
That's okay, I don't mind this back and forth, this is great. But I think most scholars would call him Philo of Alexandria from Egypt. But he did write about that period of history, and if he wasn't there getting first-hand testimony from people who knew or would have known someone who knew, then what kind of historian is he? Is he just passing on? Even if he, in the early Roman Empire, he cared about documenting the early years of the Roman Empire, if he was not first-hand involved, then what kind of confidence do we have in the reliability and credibility of any of those ancient historians, if it was as distant as you suggest it might be?
Dan, how much of Philo have you actually read yourself?
Final question.
I've read very little of Philo myself. I've read about Philo from other writers. I'm not a paid professional historian like there is.
No, I'll simply say, therefore, beware.
So, you want to stand this way, and we'll just literally just swaps. So, I thank Chris for his questions, and I now turn the grilling over to Dan to persecute. Maybe not the right word in context.
I have to say, you're the best so far on this issue that I debated. You know your stuff, so this is wonderful. This makes a great debate. So certainly you are aware of what Justin Martyr said to the pagans. Justin Martyr was a pagan himself, converted to Christianity, and he was born about the year 100. And Justin Martyr was arguing with the pagans, as you know, telling them that they should convert to Christianity because in Justin Martyr's own words, they had the divine births. We have a divine birth. You had an ascension. We have an ascension. You have miracles. We have miracles. You have exorcisms. We have exorcisms. Justin Martyr told those pagans that he was writing to that there is nothing different. That's the words he used. There's nothing different between Christianity and your pagan beliefs, so why don't you jump on board with us Christians? Why would Justin Martyr, who was closer to the times than you and I, have told the pagans that there was nothing different between paganism and Christianity?
Beats me. Seriously. First of all, Justin is not a historian, and when he tries to be, he's a singularly bad one. I'm serious. He thinks that the translation of the Septuagint, which was made about 270 BC, was made when Herod was king of Judea, which is only wrong by 230 years. But anyway, Justin is not a historian. Justin is essentially a philosopher and a creative one. But it's interesting to note that what Justin actually says is mainly to do not with virgin births. It's mainly to do with ascensions. You're right on that. He's mainly focusing on saying there are lots of ascensions. And when he comes to saying you've got virgin births, the only example he's got is Danae as the mother of Perseus. But I can't find any Greek sources that explicitly say she was a virgin either. So I'm honestly not sure why Justin gives that much away.
I thought it was Jupiter. I haven't memorized it, of course.
Sorry, Danae's the mother.
Okay. In any event, an early 2nd century Christian who believed in Jesus Christ, who was confused enough about all that to consider that Christianity and paganism were nothing different from each other. My second question. We do know that human beings make mistakes. That's one thing we do know. We do know human beings sometimes misinterpret, sometimes exaggerate, sometimes lie for the cause. We do know that. That's happened all through history, through all religions, through all cults, whatever. We do know that they are fallible human beings. So I would like to ask you, what made the early Christians exempt from the human tendency to believe things that were patently false and to exaggerate earlier stories into a greater legendary or mythical event? What made them, were they special in some way?
No. Would you like me to expand on that? Let me say first of all that I'm not sure that everyone does make mistakes. I thought I made a mistake once, but I was wrong. More specifically, I don't think there's anything that exempts the early Christians from making mistakes, from misinterpretations, some of them possibly willful. But that's what historians are for. It is the job of historians to sort through thoroughly imperfect, incomplete and sometimes misleading testimony and come up with a reasonable hypothesis that makes sense of that testimony. And that's what the historians I've been quoting all through this session have tried to do. You see, my argument doesn't require that the Gospels be perfect documents. It only requires that they be historically usable, and that's a much lesser claim.
Okay, so I get that.
Final question.
So basically, you're saying there might be error in some of the early Christian documents, which doesn't detract from a central core teaching. For example, do you agree that Matthew and Luke disagree with each other about the time of the birth of Jesus? One in 4 BC or earlier under King Herod, and one in 6 AD or later, as Luke reports, when Quirinius became the first governor of Syria.
That's a complex question, and it would take me a while to answer it reasonably. Yes, there is a serious problem with the Quirinius census in Luke. I'm not sure that it's absolutely lethal, but it is certainly a serious historical problem. There have been various suggestions made to solve it. None of them has really carried the day. My own view is that I don't think we can absolutely say Luke must be wrong, because where we can check Luke, in Acts primarily, about his knowledge of Greco-Roman administration, he's very good. So I don't know that I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt, but I think I'm willing to let that one remain unresolved, rather than saying absolutely yay or nay on it.